everyone, I'm Dr. Sam Kenyon, and today I'll be going through the drone assembly tutorial for you if you're part of the BattleDrones competition. So without further ado, let's dive in. Here I have in front of me all of the components that should have been in your kits, and here is a assembled drone. This is the final product, what you're shooting for. So I'm going to go through different parts of the assembly and show where it's located on the drones as well. So here, right here is the camera, and you can see we have this custom 3D printed enclosure for it and mounting structure. If you want to change the way that the angle is for the camera, you can just loosen the swing nut and change it that way and then tighten again. Okay. We have the top body plate here. We have the arms, the 4 arms that hold the 4 motors and the 4 propellers. And then if we flip it over, we have the bottom plate of the drone body where the battery is fixed here. And then for the 3D printed parts, we have these 4 landing gear setups with the silicone rubber bands. And then inside here, we have the Pixhawk, which is the flight controller, as well as the Jetson Nano, which is the computer, the brains of the drone. So I'll go through and show you each of those components. So we'll start with the arm and the motor setup here. Each motor comes in this little box here. There's a clockwise and a counterclockwise motor, and they each correspond to the proper direction of the propellers. You can see they're denoted with silver and black for the different clockwise and counterclockwise. So when you open these, you'll get 2 motors per case, so you should have 2 of these in your drone kits. You'll get 2 motors per case. And pull this out. And you'll see it has 3 connectors here, the same connector style as these gold connectors that we used in the soldering tutorial video, if you recall, if you've seen that already. And you should have a set of these that you would need for your setup. Okay? These motors also come in their kit with the correct screw type to screw these into the bottom of the arms. So I'll show you here. Well, this is the arm 3D printed part here. It's the same part as right here. And you can see here there's a spot for the full 4 places for the screws for the motors. So what you'll do is you'll feed the connectors through this hole. You have to do one at a time because the hole's a little small. It doesn't fit all 3 of them at the same time. So that goes like that. And you can see at the bottom, you zoom in, there's spots for these 4 screws to go. Okay, so that's how you fix the motors to the arm. And then you'll get a propeller on the top. And then from these 3 electrical connections, you'll put what's called an ESC. It comes in one of these silver bags. There's 4, one for each motor in your kit. And we'll open this one now and show you what that entails. So here we have an ESC. This provides the right controls to the motor. We have one end. You can see these 3 black connections will go directly to the motor itself. And on the other end, we have a red and a black cable, that's power. And here we have this long header cable. This is going to go to the Pixhawk flight controller. Okay, so on these connections, you'll need to shorten these cables. I would cut about that much off. And you need to connect female connectors to interface with these male connectors. Okay? And once you assemble it, you'll store everything together inside of this arm, but because it's plugged, so you can unplug it for disassembly. So you can see here in one of these arms, I have an ESC, and I have the connection. You can see that this is not, these cables were not cut, but we recommend cutting them at least halfway so you have a little less excess cabling. And yeah, so that's how you power the motors. And then on the other end, you have power. So we'll continue with this ESC. You can see we've threaded this ESC through this hole, and we recommend doing this before the landing gear is installed because this clip will get in the way. And here we have 2 more sets of these gold connectors, okay? So we put some gold connectors on one end of this, and on the other end is our flying leads that go to our power distribution board. So you can see this is the one I worked on for the soldering tutorial. This is where you'll connect the ESC to this power distribution board. And again, we have the connectors so you can unplug them for disassembly and assembly purposes. So you'll see you'll get 4 pairs of a red goes to plus and black goes to minus on this ESC board to power all of the motors. And this power distribution board lives on the bottom of the drone. Okay, so we have the battery here, and then we have this power filter that will connect the battery to the one direction of the power filter. We're not going to do that now, but when you're ready to start flying the drones is when you want to connect power. And then this power distribution, which comes in another silver bag, you can see it here. Okay, and when you open it, this is what it looks like opened. Okay, that's that part there. You'll connect the female end to the male end here of the battery, and the male end here will connect to this female connector. So that's this guy here is where you'll connect it. And there's a spot here on the bottom plate for this board to go. So I won't disassemble this one, but I'll show you on here. This is the bottom plate, right? This goes right like that. And we're going to feed through this connector, right? And again, we'll have 8 of these cables sticking out, but 2 are just here, and we can feed it through these gaps. And that's where the power distribution board is handled. We'll screw it down, and then the battery goes on top, and that's what's all going underneath the board. In terms of directionality, you can see here that this yellow cable is going to point towards the aft of the drone. So the front here is where the camera is. So this is the front of the drone. This is the back of the drone. The back of the drone is going to have this cable connection. So it's going to look like that, okay? But this is the back, and this with this little bar is the front. This will be right on top of the Jet Nano. Okay. So what screws do you need to bolt this down, you might ask? Well, we also gave you a bag. It's in a similar bag to your gold connectors, but they have a bunch of small screws, Phillips head screws. There are sizes there ranging from M1.4 to M2 screws, and here is where you're going to need M2 screws. So we have a bunch of screws that are 6 millimeters in length, and a few of the M2 screws are 8 millimeters in length. The long screws are for something else in the drone. You'll want to do the shorter M2 screws. The M2 screws are going to be the largest screws in the kit that I gave you, besides the screws that you need for the camera mount. That's much larger. Those are M4 screws, which I'll go into in a second. But this M2 screw is what you're going to use. They're self-tapping screws, so you'll just screw this directly into this drone kit. The first time might be a little tough because you have to start the threads of the screw. And so you'll do that for all the 4 corners of the ESC board, and it'll be fixed down for your bottom plate. So you've gotten it. We go from the motor to the ESC. We have to solder connections here and here. We get power here from the power distribution board, so that gets connected there. Now this end goes to the Pixhawk, but first we need an intermediate step. Which you can see out here on the back of the drone, we have a tiny board that takes this 3-pin header connector. And I'll show you where that's located here in the Pixhawk kit. So this is a box you'll get of the Pixhawk. This is a flight controller. This controls the motors. Here we have the Pixhawk, and here in this spot will be a custom header cable that we've made for you to connect the Pixhawk to the Jetson Nano. And just to give you a reference, this is the Jetson Nano. It's a single board computer, which means that this guy has the brains of a full computer that you can use to connect to the internet, send emails, open documents, run programs, all of that kind of stuff, all on one little machine. And we need a way to connect the flight controller to this single board computer, this Jetson Nano. This Nano comes in this box here. It'll come in this protective packaging, but you all should have gotten a 4 GB version of this. Okay. So here's the Jetson Nano, the Pixhawk, apologies. And inside this kit, you'll get a lot of predetermined things that can help everything get assembled together. So here we have these breakout connectors where we can basically get from a header pin connector to a Pixhawk compatible connector. So this is the one that has 8 slots that you're going to use. This is the same part that's featured here on the back of the drone. And what you're going to do is, you can see that these spots are labeled 1 through 8. You see that? Depending on your motor count, right, you're going to put the first motor into the first spot. Okay? And then here you're going to get a Pixhawk cable. You have to just find the right size in this box of cables, this bag of cables that you already have. Okay? And you're going to put one of those connectors, one end in there, and the other end is going to go into the bottom left of that Pixhawk. See that? That's where you're going to connect that. Now, if you recall, we've already talked about the power system. I'll flip this over to show you. Right, we have this power filter that goes to our power distribution board, right? And this power filter also has a Pixhawk compatible cable on it. So I'll pick the one that's not on the drone, which is oh, here it is. Perfect. So this cable is going to give filtered power to the Pixhawk. So we're going to connect this to the power 1 spot here. Okay. This version has the incorrect connector type, but I believe this version, the one that you got, should have the correct connector type to connect to this module. You can see the connector type in there. Actually, I'll just open it and show you. Okay, so this one has the correct connector type. So we can go directly from the power filter, right, that resides next to the battery, to the Pixhawk. This is giving power to the Pixhawk. And then you also connect this to the power distribution board. This gives power to the motors, okay, from the battery. So the Pixhawk also gets your custom cable that came in the top, this guy. Right now our plan is to use this telemetry 2 port, or telem 2. We might switch to telem 1, but we will let you know if that's the case. But you'll put that one connector of the custom header cable in there, and this will go onto the Nano. Okay, so this is how the Pixhawk and the Nano are going to talk to each other. Here we, this was one of the iterations we have. It's a 5-pin, but you should have a 2-pin one. And you can kind of see this first header spot has a little arrow on it, and that's how you know it's pin 1. and it doesn't have it above the other spots. So in the Jetson Nano here, we have this really large header connection. I'll spin this around so you can see. On the inside here, we have it labeled as it goes along this connection. So in the 1 spot, we have 3.3 volts. In the 2 spot, we have 5 volts. And this is pin 3, pin 4, pin 5, pin 6, pin 7, pin 8. And starting at pin 8 is what you're going to care about. You're going to ensure that the arrow, the pin 1 of your 2-pin header goes at pin 8. Okay? Like that. So that's how you're going to connect the Pixhawk to the Jetson Nano. So again, pretend that there's only 2 here. You'll connect this arrow to 2, 4, 6, 8. So you go 4 up on the inside on the left-hand side. That will get your the pin 1 on the pin 8 of the Nano. If you have any questions on that, send us an email. We can help with that. But okay, so that's how the Pixhawk and the Nano talk. Okay. And let's see. So that's how we go from the motors all the way to the Pixhawk, and how the Pixhawk connects to the Jetson Nano, and how it connects to the power distribution board. Now this power distribution board doesn't just handle the filtered power in and gives power to the motors, it also gives power to the Jetson Nano itself. So here's where you're going to connect a barrel jack plug. You're going to solder the ends onto there, and then the other end is going to go to the Jetson Nano. So we'll try to show you that. At this point, I'm going to disconnect the battery. So we can look deeper at how this is assembled. And these Velcro strips, like the ones featured here, also came in your kit. Okay. Let me remove that with that. So you can see here we have this ESC board, and on this other end, we have some power cables connected to the ground and the 5-volt connections. So this, you'll put some flying leads on there with the golden plugs. Now on the other end here, we have this cable. And this cable gives power to the Jetson Nano. You can see it right there. That's the barrel plug. It's squeezed in there. We've modified the top of that so it's a little easier to fit in that small space for you. I'll show you what that cable looks like in one moment. So here are the barrel plugs connectors that you should have received. We've modified some of this extra rubber here so it can fit in that smaller space. But what you'll do is you'll separate these 2 leads and solder them directly to this 5-volt in ground. Well, not directly, but you'll connect it to a connector, right? So you can have some modularity to it. And then you'll have some flying leads similar to this, but that go to the 5-volt and the grounds here. Okay? So that's how you give power to the Nano, and you can see here, this has a barrel plug. And I believe the only other thing you'll have to do is there's a jumper here on the board that changes where it's getting power from. So you can either power it with this micro USB connection, say like a phone has a similar connection to that, and you can plug that into the wall. So you should all have these. I believe they're white in your kits. But this is how you power the Jetson Nano on. You'll just plug this into the wall, and the other end will go into the Nano, this micro USB connection. That is for when you're developing it, but when it's flying on the drone, you'll use the barrel plug. So when you're using the barrel plug, you just have to switch this header from this configuration to actually going over both of those header pins there. Okay? So it should look like that, connected to both of them. If you go back to developing and you need to plug this into the wall, like so, you just need to remove the header pin and connect it, okay? And if you've done that correctly, you should get a light that goes on. This side doesn't have power, but this other side does. Okay. So yeah, that's what you do with this power cable. You'll connect the gold connectors to that, then have some flying leads from this power distribution board, and that's how the Jetson Nano gets power. Okay. So we've gone through all of the different connections for the Pixhawk. We've gone through all of the connections for this power. Now let's go through the rest of the drone body here. This is what the landing gear parts look like. That's what's featured here. And how you'll assemble these is, you can see that there's a bit of a ridge here on this inside, and then this other side is flat. The side that kind of has a white ashiness to it. This is the side that you're going to put on the inside, like this, okay? And you can kind of see that some of that white ashiness is external to these parts, okay? And then in here, there's a clip. You should have received 4 of these clips. This is how you fix the landing gears together. You will thread this through. And again, these clips are a lot easier to assemble after you've threaded your ESC lines through the sides of the arms. And then on the bottom is how you have the rubber band configuration. I'm going to find this. Okay, so how this works with the rubber bands, you have these landing gears with the little intermediate clips here that you'll push on. Okay. Again, you have a bunch of extras of these, so if you lose them, which is common, not a big deal. You should thread these 2 pieces through and clip them. And when you should have received in your kit some of these rubber bands. You're going to fix one end of the rubber band to this far side connector, right? Just remove one side, thread that through, and put it back. And you will thread this through this little notch here on the bottom plate. You can kind of see that here. See, it kind of just slides right through. And you'll fix the other end on this guy. So you can kind of see in this, we have one end of the rubber band here. It goes through this notch on the bottom plate, and the other end goes on the other thing. So there's a little bit of the springiness action to it. It kind of dampens when the drone lands. You can kind of see it has a bit of that spring action, but they're pretty rigid. You should have plenty in case one snaps. Very common, you can replace it, okay? So that's a landing gear setup, the arms, we've covered the bottom body that gets the power distribution. This top plate here, again, with this here, we have the camera goes here. And the Pixhawk should live on the inside here, right like that. You can kind of see that's where this Pixhawk is placed on this drone. Let me turn this for the camera. You can see it's living under there. But if that gets too cramped, you can also fit the Pixhawk up here too, and you can put some Velcro over it. You have some options there. So this part here that's fixed to the top of the top plate, you actually have some holes, not on this version, but on your version of the top plate, there should be two holes here to fix this like this to the back of the drone. And to use that, you also want to use the M2 screws, but the longer ones, okay? Oh, not the long ones, my apologies. To fix that, you'll just use the M2 screws, the normal length ones. It's 6 millimeters length. The same ones that you use to fix the power distribution board, you'll also use to fix this to the top plate, okay? So this goes to the top plate. It'll look like that when you're done, and you just use that M2 screw to do that on the two holes. Okay, speaking of screws, you have some N1.7 screws that will actually help you to fix the Nano to this bracket. So some of the 3D printed parts that you got were these Nano Brackets, which you'll be able to tell based on the orientation of the holes which way the Nano needs to fit inside of that, but it should be with the thick end here at the top close to the fins and the thin end close to all the connectors. And these take the M1.7 type, so this is the in-between size. We have the M2s, the M1.4s, which are very small, and then the M1.7s, 6 millimeters is what you'll use. So to compare that with the M2, in my hand here, you can see the difference. You can see that they're a little bit smaller. The other screw type, the 1.4, are even smaller, and I'll show you that for the difference too. You can see the M1.4s even smaller, and those are to fix this is the camera case here, so you can kind of see this matches, and that has a lid which is here. And this lid is fixed to the back and has spots here for M1.4 screws. So you're going to fix all four corners of the camera lid with the 1.4 screws, okay? However, inside, you can see we have 4 holes. That's where we're going to fix the camera. So this is a slightly different camera, but it looks very similar. You're going to fix the camera in there like that, and you're going to use the M2 screws for these holes. Okay, so the bigger screws you'll use in the top holes. Okay? Regarding the rest of the camera mount geometry, it's quite straightforward. I'll disassemble this to show you how it works. But you have a bolt at one end that you're going to thread through. So you should have gotten this 3-prong part, and this part, and then the lid. Where did I put the lid? Oh, right here. And the lid. This all brings together the camera assembly, and you should have gotten a wing nut, a M4 screw, and this washer. Okay? So you put the prongs together first. Put the M4 screw through. There should be a spot at the back of the 3-prong piece to fit the head of the hex screw into nicely. Then you put the washer down, and then you'll put this wing nut on. Okay? So that's the camera mount assembly. And now, to affix this camera mount to the top of the drone body, it's going to go, it's going to go in this spot. This is the older version of the part, but there should be 4 holes there in that spot, which I'll show you on this version. So you can see here we have 4 holes, and this is where you're going to fix down the camera mount. And this is when you're going to want to use the longer M2 screws. So you can see, I'll put it again in my hand, the comparison between. This is the 6 millimeter M2 screw here, and that's the 8 millimeter long one. So you're going to use the 8 millimeter one to screw down this drone body. Screw the camera mount down to the drone body. And where's my screwdriver? Okay. You might need to do this first if you're having a hard time getting this in before assembling the full assembly of the camera mount. But you can, if you have a long enough screw, you can maybe do it like that. Okay? The last thing I want to touch on this tutorial is the battery and the battery chargers. So if we can move over here. In your drone kit, you should have also received 2 of these batteries. This is so if you do a trial fly, you can have a backup battery in case you drain one of the batteries. But it looks just like this. Okay. And these are beepers for to help to tell us when the battery is low. We'll give you additional instructions on how to run those, but you should have received that in your kit. That's what that's for. You also should have received this connector. This cable helps you connect the battery to the charger. So this end will connect to the battery, and this banana plug end should connect to the charger. So here's the charger. Okay. You should have a plug that goes from the charger to the wall. That's what this brick is for. On the other end, you should have banana plugs, and this is how you connect the battery to the charging device. And we'll give you a future tutorial about how to properly charge the battery, because you don't want to overcharge it. You also don't want to drain the battery of these drone batteries too much, or else they won't be able to charge up again. So we'll give you a future tutorial on that. Okay. And I believe that concludes this tutorial. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions about any of the materials covered, please send us an email. We'll have it in the comment section of this YouTube video. And yeah, we look forward to seeing some drones fly. Bye, everyone. Back again. Realized I forgot to show you something about how to install the Jetson Nano into the drone. Hopefully you can see here that this is the bottom of the Nano, and this is the top, with the fins sticking out the back. And this gets press fitted into this top plate quite closely through the bracket configuration. So I'm going to show you where exactly that goes. So here's the top plate. Camera's going here. On the aft is the header pin connectors to go to the Pixhawk. Okay? And if you flip this over, you can see that there's a square here. That is the space for this Jetson Nano to go. There's some slots on either side here. And this Jetson Nano is just going to slide right in. So we're going to slide in the narrow side first with all of the connectors. I'm going to slide that in first. And if this is your first time doing it, it's going to take a lot of elbow grease. Just be patient with it. The more that you do it, the more that the sides will just get sanded down just a little bit for the connection. So one thing to help though is if you're pushing evenly on both sides so that it doesn't get twisted. Just going in evenly. Okay, you push that all the way in so it's to the edge. And that's how you affix the Jetson Nano to the top plate. So you can see it, this is the configuration. This is the same configuration here. Another thing I also forgot to mention too is this bottom plate and the top plate are connected with more pins. We have these bigger pins, right? We have the smaller pins that go into for the landing gear, but these larger pins connect between the top plate, the arm, and the bottom plate. So I'll just show you that on one side here. It's a pretty tight fit, so you can kind of do one at a time. So first I'll do the top, then I'll do the arm, and then I'll align this just right to get the bottom. you have to ensure that the arm is aligned perpendicular properly, or else it won't fix in. It's also a bit easier when you have the other arms on the other sides too. But yeah, that's basically how it goes. And then you can tell that we went from the top to the bottom with this pin. And what you'll do is reinforce it once your assembly's all good. You'll reinforce it by putting another pin in the other direction. Okay? But yeah, you can see that there's pins on all 4 of these rounded corners. And so all this assembly needs is to put in pins in the opposite direction. Okay? Like that. And then I'll make sure that the arms are nice and reinforced. But again, I encourage you to do that. Once your assembly is all done, then do that, so if you need to move things around and take the top plate off the bottom plate, you'll be able to do that. All right, now this concludes the complete drone assembly tutorial. Please email us if you have questions. Thanks.